EDGAR CAYCE. For each soul. Part 1. The entrance of each soul is that it may become more and more aware in materiality of the oneness of all force, with one purpose and one desire to be wholly in Him, and to be a channel where His blessings may come to others, or to be more and more in that way of manifesting the creative forces we call God in manifested form among the fellow men. If one would find love, one must show self-lovely. If one would have friends, one must show self-friendly. For that you sow, that you reap. For into the soil of human experience go the activities of every individual in its dealings, its associations and its reactions to the mental, the material and the spiritual aspect of every soul's experience. For not only in self as the study of self is there the understanding and the comprehending of the experiences of others, but also in the study of the spiritual self and the spiritual application in the material world there is the gaining for the individual of a greater consciousness and a greater understanding of infinity in its relationships. Each soul is a portion of the divine. Motivating that soul body is the spirit of divinity. The soul is a companion of, a motivative influence in, the activities of an entity throughout its experiences in whatever sphere of consciousness it may attain perception. Hence each soul is a universe in itself. The will of each soul is that it may make itself as one with the Creator, yet knowing itself to be itself, then that which would aid or help, or give hope, or give that which would be as a helpful experience would be well. The real purpose as should be for each soul is the message of the love of the Savior, Jesus the Christ, for the children of men. No, the basis of all thy planning must be in that which is prompted from the spiritual and the ideal import. In whatever service or whatever activity, or whatever association, let those impelling forces as arise from that thou knowest, thou feelest, be expressed. You must be about thy Father's, thy brother's business, that the earth may be better for thou having lived in same. For each soul is a channel in manifested form through which, in the body activities, others may take hope, others may know that thy Redeemer liveth and is ever at hand. What then is an ideal for an entity? By what measure is it to be meted? That which is truth, that which is ideal in the experience of each soul, is that which is a continued development towards that which is of constructive nature in the experience. This then should be in the experience of the entity held as that goal, that position, that understanding. Not as impelling others by a tirade, as by speech, but by so living, by so acting that those things, those conditions, those experiences are expressed in such ways and manners that others seeing, others experiencing that which the entity has done, does do about its experience with its ideal, become aware of a living ensample, a living example unto others. If you would have love, be lovely. If you would have friends, be friendly. If you would have others to listen to what thine opinions are, thy desires are, listen to others. And all experiences with others are at least a 50-50 proposition, and not self to become too dictatorial ever. For each soul is constantly meeting itself, and only self may separate the understanding from the creative forces that bring harmony, joy, peace, yet happiness into the experience of each soul. If it will but accord itself to being good for something, rather than just being good, or just going along gaining or taking, or with the gimmies from all the associations and activities. Hold fast to that as thou didst experience as a development in those experiences where not only physical aid, not only economic independence in relationships to experiences was brought, but the activities were such that made for freedom, freedom of mind, of soul, to seek, to know, to experience its relationships to its Creator, its mate, its part of itself. For the creative forces are more even than companionship. For the heritage of each soul is to know itself to be itself yet one with that creative force. The purpose of the entrance of each soul is that it may develop towards being as one with, being a companion with creative forces or, as commonly called, God. This is the opportunity then in each experience that each soul bears in relationships to those things that offer the opportunity for being a channel, being expression of, toward the fellow man, of that as the entity holds as its relationship to its creator. For the very first injunction that was given, or question asked when choices were made, was that each soul is its brother's keeper, for it bears a relative relationship to that first cause, that first premise in individual experience. For the information, the records here are of the soul, that portion, that real self, that lives on, and on. And each soul is, in the experiences of consciousness on the material plane, constantly meeting self and that self has done to others in the relationships to that which is spiritual, which is creative, which is real, which is everlasting. For the soul was made in the image of the Creator, to be a companion with that influence which is constructive, which is creative. And in materiality, as an individual expresses or manifests its activity in relationship to its fellow man, it carries with it that natural import of, as ye do it unto the least of thy brethren, of thy fellow man, ye do it unto thy God, thy source of power, thy source of supply. Then to use that of any nature that is contrary to the source is dividing the house against itself, which cannot stand. Each entity, each soul, is responsible to its own better self. For that is the birthright to each soul, in an experience in the earth. And to judge or to condemn another for thine own environment, thine own influence, is only to shame self, for that has been builded in self. Never belittle self. For know within that the Master, the Lord thy God, overlooks that thou hast done and has given. Whosoever will may take the cup. Each soul is willing, the flesh is weak. The Lord hath not willed that any soul should perish for that berating of self, for any activity that may have, in the experience of an entity among its fellows, caused this or that to come to pass. No, he hath willed that each soul should know the way, and hath prepared a way. For each soul is born of water and of blood. Blood is the material, water is the ethereal or the spiritual forces, as may be manifested, or that are as shadows of those that take hold upon the minds and the souls and the hearts of men. The purposes, the import of the earthly sojourn of each soul is to meet self, to overcome those weaknesses in self, and become more and more adaptable to the spiritual truths that are a part of each and every entity. While each soul is in the flesh, there is a constant meeting of same. It is true that the body is as but a cloak or a garment, and as its usages are put to constructive forces, even though, as with this body, it is tattered or torn and thus prevented from giving, from the material angle, the more personal self in its efforts, we find that the greater spiritual and the greater helpfulness may be gained for the body as an example of that used as the pattern, if the shadows and the mental self may be so applied as to overcome those weaknesses, those hindrances, those activities so as to give of a greater influence. For as each soul is in the image of the Maker, so do the activities find more and more that there must be seen. There must be reflected not only in self but seen in the mind and the heart and the soul of others that you would worship in your Creator. Am I helping or hurting? 1496. Answer within self. Who is to be the judge to anyone's action? For each soul is a portion of the creative forces. Art thou acting as ye would be acted toward if the circumstances and the conditions were reversed? These are the manners of judgment in self. What is thy standard? There should be kept, to be sure, a hopeful, constructive attitude as to its material and physical welfare, as well as in its spiritual application and spiritual attitudes. For each soul should gain that understanding that whatever may be the experience, if there is not resentment, if there is not contention, if there is not the giving of offense, It is for then that soul's own understanding, and will build within the consciousness of the soul itself that which may bring the greater understanding of the spiritual in the physical body. Then let the prayer, the meditation ever be. Here am I, Lord. Thou knowest my faults, thou knowest my weaknesses, yet I am thine, and thou would use me as thou seest fit. Let thy will, O God, be done in and through me, in such measures that I may be a channel of blessings to others. For as I forgive, may I be forgiven. As I bless, may I be blessed by thy love and thy presence. Then keep me in the ways, in body, in mind, in spirit, that I should go.